So there I was, standing in front of what the Galactic Military Academy proudly called their Death Gauntlet obstacle course. And let me tell you, the name was about as subtle as a brick to the face. Picture this: a mile-long nightmare of spinning blades, plasma pits, gravity wells, and what I can only describe as angry geometric shapes that somehow defied 3 different laws of physics. The whole thing looked like someone had asked a committee of sadistic engineers to design the world's most elaborate mousetrap, then gave them unlimited budget and a serious grudge against anything with a pulse. The stats were impressive, I'll give them that. 90% failure rate. 90%. That means out of every 10 brave souls who attempted this mechanical hellscape, 9 of them ended up in the medical bay, the psychiatric ward, or in some cases both. The Academy loved to brag about those numbers like they were advertising a luxury resort instead of a military training facility. And who designed this masterpiece of controlled chaos? Why, the finest alien military minds in the galaxy, of course. Commander Thorak, a 7-foot-tall reptilian nightmare with more medals than a dictator and an ego to match, liked to remind everyone that his species had conquered 47 star systems, using tactics perfected on courses just like this one. Then there was Lieutenant Glixon, a crystalline being who spoke in mathematical equations and apparently viewed fun as a statistical anomaly that needed to be corrected. These two had spent the better part of a decade fine-tuning their precious obstacle course, adjusting every laser grid and recalibrating every crushing mechanism to achieve maximum educational trauma. They treated it like their firstborn child, if their firstborn child happened to be a homicidal robot with daddy issues. Now you might be wondering how yours truly, Jake Morrison, cocky human cadet extraordinaire, ended up volunteering to be the next victim of this elaborate torture device. Well, the short answer is, I have a big mouth and an even bigger ego. The long answer involves me spending the last 3 weeks at the Academy talking about how humans were obviously the superior species in the galaxy, and how our innovative thinking and adaptive problem-solving made us natural-born warriors. Yeah, I know, past me was an idiot. It started innocently enough. I was in the mess hall, regaling a table of various alien cadets with tales of human military prowess. You know, the usual greatest hits. World War II, the Spartan 300, that time my Uncle Rick fought off 3 raccoons with nothing but a pool noodle. Classic human superiority complex stuff. The thing about humans, I said, waving my protein paste around like I was conducting an orchestra, is that we don't just think outside the box. We don't even acknowledge the box exists. We see a problem, we find a solution, and if that solution involves doing something completely insane, well, that's just Tuesday for us. The assembled aliens nodded politely, the way you do when someone's explaining why their favorite sports team is clearly the best despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. But I was on a roll, and subtlety had never been my strong suit. Take your death gauntlet, for example, I continued, gesturing toward the training facility where ominous mechanical sounds echoed through the corridors. I bet a human could breeze through that thing. We're basically built for chaos. That's when Commander Thorak decided to take an interest in our conversation. Picture a crocodile wearing a uniform and harboring serious doubts about evolution, and you're halfway to understanding the presence that suddenly loomed over our table. "Good day, Morrison," he rumbled, his voice like gravel in a blender. "Did I just hear you claim that humans could easily complete our training course?" Now, a smart person would have backpedaled faster than a unicyclist on a cliff. A wise person would have apologized and quietly returned to their protein paste. But I, Jake Morrison, was apparently neither smart nor wise. "Not just complete it, sir," I said, standing up with the kind of confidence that can only come from complete ignorance. "I bet a human could set a new record." The mess hall went quiet. Not library quiet, not classroom quiet, but that special kind of quiet that happens right before someone makes a decision they're going to regret for the rest of their hopefully long, but probably shortened life. Commander Thorak smiled, which on his face looked less like happiness and more like a preview of digestion. "Very well, Cadet Morrison," he said. "Tomorrow morning, 0800 hours, you'll have your chance to prove this remarkable human adaptability. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I learned that the universe has a sense of humor, and it's terrible." 0800 came way too early, like it always does when you're about to do something monumentally stupid. I stood at the starting line of the death gauntlet, trying to look confident while my stomach performed what felt like an interpretive dance about regret. The obstacle course stretched out before me like a fever dream designed by someone who clearly had issues with the concept of survival. Commander Thorak stood to my right, clipboard in hand, looking like Christmas morning and a funeral had somehow had a baby. Cadet Morrison, he announced to the small crowd of spectators who had gathered to watch the human make a fool of himself. You will attempt to complete the death gauntlet in under the current record time of 47 minutes and 32 seconds. 47 minutes for a mile-long course. That should have been my first clue that maybe, just maybe, I had bitten off more than I could chew. Lieutenant Glickson hovered nearby, his crystalline form refracting the morning light into tiny rainbows that somehow managed to look disapproving. Statistical probability of success based on human physiological parameters, 7.3%, he announced in his sing-song mathematical voice. Factoring in overconfidence variable, 3.1%. Thanks for the pep talk, buddy, I muttered, stretching muscles that were already questioning their life choices. The first obstacle looked simple enough. A series of rotating platforms over a pit of what the safety manual cheerfully described as non-lethal but extremely unpleasant purple goo. How hard could it be? Famous last words right there. I sprinted forward with all the grace and coordination of a caffeinated gazelle, leaped onto the first platform, and immediately learned that alien engineering apparently operates on different principles than human playground equipment. The platform didn't just rotate, it rotated in 3 dimensions, while occasionally deciding that gravity was more of a suggestion than a law. 10 seconds in, I was hanging upside down, spinning like a very confused disco ball, trying to figure out which way was up while the purple goo below made what sounded like disappointed sighing noises. Fascinating, Commander Thorak observed. Most species at least make it to the second platform before experiencing complete spatial disorientation. I managed to claw my way to solid ground, dizzy but determined. The second obstacle was a laser maze that looked like someone had asked a spider to design a nightclub light show. The beams moved in patterns that hurt to look at, shifting between colors that my human eyes couldn't quite process. The key, Lieutenant Glickson explained helpfully, is to calculate the 17-dimensional geometric progression while accounting for temporal flux variations. Right, I said, or I could just, run really fast and hope for the best. I made it exactly 6 feet before a cheerful yellow laser tagged me in the shoulder, sending a jolt through my nervous system that felt like being high-fived by lightning. The safety systems activated immediately, surrounding me in a containment field while klaxons wailed like the universe was filing a formal complaint. Obstacle 2 complete, announced the automated safety system in a voice so patronizingly cheerful it could have hosted a children's show. Participant eliminated. Time 4 minutes 17 seconds. Please report to medical for standard neural recalibration. The gathered aliens made what I can only describe as polite applause mixed with the sound of expectations being confirmed. Commander Thorak made a note on his clipboard with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for people whose lottery numbers just came up. An admirable attempt, Cadet Morrison, he said, and I could hear the barely contained glee in his voice. Perhaps humans are not quite as naturally gifted at military applications as previously claimed. I stumbled off the course, my nervous system still doing the electric slide, and tried to salvage what was left of my dignity. Yeah, well, that's just one human, I said weakly. We're not all the same, Some of us are way more adaptive than others. Oh, really? Commander Thorak's reptilian features arranged themselves into what might have been amusement if crocodiles could experience joy. And I suppose you know such an individual? Here's where Past Jake really decided to dig the hole deeper, because apparently getting electrocuted by alien technology wasn't enough humiliation for one day. Actually, yeah, I said, my mouth apparently operating independently of my brain. My little sister Emma is visiting the academy next week. She's 8 years old, and I've never seen a playground that could slow her down. Kids like a tiny hurricane with pigtails. The aliens exchanged glances. Lieutenant Glickson's crystalline form flickered with what might have been confusion. You believe a juvenile human could succeed where you have failed? I'm just saying, I continued, because when you're in a hole, the only logical thing to do is keep digging. Emma doesn't think like other people. She doesn't see obstacles, she sees jungle gyms. She doesn't see problems, she sees games. Last month she figured out how to climb into the house through the chimney because she forgot her key. Don't ask me how she fit, physics apparently doesn't apply to 8-year-olds. Commander Thorak's eyes gleamed with the kind of interest that usually preceded someone learning an important life lesson. How fascinating. Perhaps we should meet this remarkable young human. And that's how I managed to turn my personal humiliation into a family affair, because apparently, when it comes to making bad decisions, I'm an overachiever. Let me tell you something about my little sister Emma. She's what happens when pure chaos decides to take human form, add pigtails, and arm itself with an unlimited supply of fruit snacks. At 8 years old, she has the energy of a small nuclear reactor and the attention span of a caffeinated squirrel. She also has this uncanny ability to find the one thing in any environment that adults specifically don't want her to touch, and then touch it with the enthusiasm of a concert pianist. So when she bounced into the Galactic Military Academy's main training facility the following week, wearing a bright pink backpack covered in unicorn stickers and light-up sneakers that played a tinny version of some pop song with every step, I knew we were all in trouble. "Jake!" she shrieked across the cavernous space, her voice echoing off walls designed to withstand plasma bombardment. "This place is so cool! Is that where they keep the space lasers? Can I see the space lasers? Do they have a gift shop?" Commander Thorak, who had been giving a dignified tour to some visiting dignitaries, stopped mid-sentence and stared. I don't think he'd ever encountered anything quite like Emma before. To be fair, most people haven't. She's a unique experience, like being hit by a rainbow-colored freight train full of glitter and good intentions. "Cadet Morrison," Thorak said slowly. "Is this the remarkable young human you mentioned?" "That's her," I confirmed, watching Emma immediately zero in on a control panel that probably cost more than my college tuition. "Emma, don't touch that." "I'm not touching it," she called back, which in Emma speak meant she was absolutely touching it but had found a technical loophole. "I'm just looking at it really closely with my finger." Lieutenant Glixen materialized beside us, his crystalline form practically vibrating with what I can only assume was computational anxiety. "The probability of structural damage has increased by 47% since her arrival," he announced. "She's been here for 30 seconds, I pointed out. "Precisely." Emma, having apparently determined that the control panel wasn't going to do anything interesting, turned her attention to the Death Gauntlet obstacle course. Her eyes went wide with the kind of wonder usually reserved for Christmas morning or ice cream trucks. "Ooh, is that a playground?" she asked, bouncing on her toes. "It looks like the world's most awesome playground." Commander Thorak drew himself up to his full, temptating height, which was quite impressive until you realized he was trying to intimidate someone who regularly argued with vegetables at dinner time. "Young human," he intoned, "this is not a playground. This is a precision military training facility designed to test the limits of galactic combat readiness. It has a 90% failure rate and has humbled warriors from 17 different star systems." Emma tilted her head, considering this information with the serious expression she usually reserved for deciding which crayon to use. "But it looks really fun," she said. "Are those spinny things? I love spinny things. And is that a laser tag arena? We have one at the mall back home, but it doesn't have nearly enough lasers." "Those are not recreational spinning devices," Lieutenant Glixen explained with the patience of someone who clearly didn't have younger siblings. "They are precisely calibrated rotational platforms, designed to disorient subjects through multi-dimensional gravitational variance." "So they're really good spinny things," Emma translated. "Even better." I watched Commander Thorak's eyes start to twitch. It was a small twitch, barely noticeable, but I'd seen that look before. It was the same expression my elementary school principal used to get when Emma would ask innocent questions like, "Why can't we paint the hallways?" or "What happens if I pull this fire alarm really gently?" "Child," Thorak said, clearly struggling to maintain his military bearing, "this obstacle course is designed for trained military personnel. It requires years of preparation, advanced tactical knowledge, and peak physical conditioning. It is not suitable for younglings." Emma considered this, then shrugged. "That's okay. I probably couldn't do it anyway. I'm not very good at following rules." There it was, the moment that should have been Commander Thorak's victory, the point where any reasonable adult would nod and move on to safer topics. But Emma had just deployed what I recognized as her most dangerous weapon. Reverse psychology delivered with the innocent confidence of someone who genuinely didn't understand why adults made everything so complicated. "However," she continued, wandering closer to the starting line, "it does look like that obstacle course at summer camp, except way cooler. That one only had rope swings and mud pits. This one has actual lasers, and those crushing things look way more fun than boring old tires." "Crushing mechanisms," Lieutenant Glixen corrected automatically. "Calibrated for optimal resistance training through controlled application of compressive force." "Right, fun crushing things," Emma agreed. "Oh, and Jake, you said this was supposed to be super hard, but I don't see why. It's just like going from one playground toy to the next, except with more sparkly lights." Commander Thorak's other eye started twitching. "Young human, you do not understand the complexity of these challenges. Each obstacle requires specific tactical approaches developed over centuries of military science." Emma had reached the starting line now and was examining the first rotating platform with the kind of focused attention she usually reserved for figuring out how to reach cookies on high shelves. "It's just about timing, right?" she said. "Like jumping rope, but with more spinny parts. And that laser thing looks like a giant game of don't step on the cracks, except the cracks try to zap you." "That is a gross oversimplification of a 17-dimensional geometric matrix," Lieutenant Glickson protested. "If you say so," Emma said cheerfully. Then she looked up at Commander Thorak with those big, innocent eyes that had talked me into more trouble than I cared to remember. But I bet if someone was really small and didn't think too hard about all the scary parts, they could probably just run through it like it was recess. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happens right before someone makes a decision that will be talked about in military academies for generations. Commander Thorak stared down at this tiny human child who had just casually dismissed his life's work as an overcomplicated playground, and I could practically see the gears turning in his reptilian brain. "Impossible," he said finally. "Absolutely impossible." Emma smiled, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew that smile. That was her challenge-accepted smile, the same one she'd worn right before she convinced the neighborhood cats to help her build a fort, or the time she'd decided to reorganize my room to make it more efficient. "You're probably right," she agreed, in a tone that suggested she thought he was absolutely wrong. "It does look pretty tricky." And that, right there, was the moment Commander Thorak sealed his own fate. What happened next unfolded with the kind of inevitable disaster that makes you wonder if the universe keeps a highlight reel of its greatest practical jokes. Commander Thorak, clearly deciding that the best way to handle a small child questioning his life's work was to give her a detailed explanation of why she was wrong, began launching into what I recognized as his comprehensive overview of advanced military obstacle theory lecture. "You see, young human," he began, gesturing grandly toward the course. "Each challenge is precisely designed to test specific combat capabilities. The rotating platforms, for instance, require a sophisticated understanding of three-dimensional momentum transfer, while maintaining technical awareness under gravitational stress." Emma nodded along politely, the way kids do when adults are saying important-sounding words that don't actually mean anything, but I noticed she was also backing up toward the starting line, examining the course controls with the kind of innocent curiosity that had once resulted in her accidentally reprogramming our neighbor's smart doorbell to only speak in pirate. "The laser matrix," Commander Thorak continued, warming to his subject, "utilizes 17 different wavelengths in a pattern based on the combat movements of the legendary Zephyrian Shadow Warriors. It requires years of study to even comprehend the basic mathematical principles involved." "Uh-huh," Emma agreed, reaching out to touch what looked suspiciously like a big red button marked with alien symbols that probably meant something like, "Do not touch unless you want everything to start moving at once." "Emma," I started to say, but Lieutenant Glickson was already reciting statistical probabilities, and Commander Thorak was explaining the historical significance of the gravity manipulation chambers, and nobody was paying attention to the 8-year-old, who was now standing directly on the starting sensor pad. "The beauty of the system," Thorak declared, "is that it activates automatically when it detects a participant in the starting position, thus eliminating any possibility of hesitation or second thoughts that might compromise the integrity of the..." The course roared to life. Lights flashed, mechanisms whirred, and somewhere in the distance, a computerized voice announced, "Death Gauntlet sequence initiated. Participant detected. Good luck, and please remember to update your emergency contact information." Emma looked around at the suddenly active obstacle course with delight. "Oh, cool. It's like those motion sensor games at Chuck E. Cheese." "Wait!" Commander Thorak bellowed, but Emma was already moving. "Here's the thing about 8-year-olds. They don't overthink things. When presented with a spinning platform, an adult sees a complex engineering challenge requiring careful timing and precise calculation. A kid sees a merry-go-round that forgot to slow down." Emma took a running leap onto the first rotating platform like she was jumping into a swimming pool, landed in a crouch, and immediately started giggling as the mechanism spun her through what Lieutenant Glickson had described as disorienting three-dimensional rotation designed to compromise spatial orientation. "Whee!" she shouted, treating the whole thing like the world's most elaborate carnival ride. "This is way better than the tilt-a-whirl." She rode the platform through 2 complete cycles, clearly having the time of her life, then casually hopped off onto the next one when it swung close enough. No careful timing, no mathematical calculations, just pure playground instinct and the kind of balance that comes from spending your weekends climbing trees that reasonable people would consider too tall. "This is impossible," Lieutenant Glixon muttered, his crystalline form flickering with what I could only assume was computational distress. She's treating a precision military obstacle like a recreational activity. Because that's what it is to her, I realized, watching my baby sister surf through the rotating platform section like she was riding escalators at the mall. She doesn't see a test, she sees toys. Commander Thorak was standing perfectly still, watching Emma approach the laser maze with the expression of someone whose entire worldview was currently being rearranged by forces beyond their control. The laser maze activated as Emma entered, filling the air with those 17 different wavelengths in the legendary pattern of the Zephyrian Shadow Warriors. It was beautiful, deadly, and absolutely required years of study to navigate safely. Emma took one look at the dancing beams of light and clapped her hands together. Ooh, it's like laser tag and hopscotch had a baby. Then she started skipping. Not running, not carefully calculating angles and timing, not employing any sophisticated understanding of three-dimensional momentum transfer. Skipping, like she was playing in the backyard. The lasers, programmed to track and intercept targets moving with military precision and tactical awareness, had apparently never encountered anyone who moved like they were playing a game of The Floor is Lava, while humming the theme song from a cartoon about friendship and magic. Emma danced through the maze like she was choreographing it, ducking under beams with the fluid grace of someone who spent their free time playing limbo, stepping over others like she was avoiding cracks in the sidewalk, and somehow managing to time every movement perfectly without seeming to think about it at all. She's not even trying to avoid them strategically, Lieutenant Glixon observed, his voice climbing toward frequencies that suggested either admiration or a complete nervous breakdown. She's just playing. The targeting system doesn't know how to compensate for random recreational movement patterns. Of course not, I said, feeling a mixture of pride and existential terror. Your targeting system was designed to fight warriors, not someone who learned evasion techniques from games of tag. Emma emerged from the laser maze completely unsinged, spinning in a circle with her arms spread wide. That was awesome! It was like dancing with rainbows that wanted to play tag. The gravity manipulation chambers were next, those precision-engineered zones of altered physics that were supposed to test a warrior's ability to adapt to changing battlefield conditions. Emma took one step into the first chamber, where gravity suddenly shifted to pull sideways instead of down, and immediately started walking up the wall like she was in a funhouse. This is like that spinning tunnel at the Science Museum, she called out, now running along the ceiling while Commander Thorak made small choking sounds. Except I don't have to wait in line. She navigated the gravity chambers like they were jungle gyms, treating each shift in orientation as a new playground feature rather than a deadly challenge. When the gravity reversed completely, she just did a somersault and kept going. When it shifted to pull in 3 directions at once, she used the walls like monkey bars. By the time she reached the crushing mechanisms, those calibrated compressive force applications designed for optimal resistance training, a crowd had gathered. Alien cadets, instructors, and even some visiting dignitaries had come to witness what was either the most remarkable military performance in galactic history, or the universe's most elaborate demonstration of why humans were too chaotic to be allowed nice things. Emma approached the massive mechanical crushers, those carefully timed instruments of measured destruction, and immediately identified them as the most obvious thing in the world. Oh, it's like that game where you try to cross the street without getting caught by the cars, except the cars are really, really big and made of metal. She waited for exactly the right moment, then darted through the crushing mechanisms like she was playing the world's most extreme version of red light, green light. No stress, no fear, no complex tactical analysis of mechanical timing patterns. Just a kid who had spent years perfecting the art of not getting caught when she wasn't supposed to be somewhere. 14 minutes, someone whispered. She's been running for 14 minutes. The current record was 47 minutes and 32 seconds. Emma was treating the galaxy's most feared military obstacle course like a morning jog through the most interesting playground she'd ever seen. As she approached the final obstacle, a complex maze of plasma conduits and force barriers that had taken Commander Thorak himself 3 attempts to master, Emma paused for the first time since she'd started running. "Hey, Jake," she called back, her voice echoing through the suddenly silent training facility. "Do you think they have juice boxes when I'm done? All this playing made me thirsty." Then she disappeared into the final challenge, humming something that sounded suspiciously like the theme song from her favorite cartoon about magical ponies. 3 minutes later, Emma Morrison emerged from the plasma conduit maze with her pigtails slightly singed but otherwise completely intact, carrying what appeared to be a small piece of alien technology she'd found interesting. "Done," she announced cheerfully. "That was fun. The glowy tunnel things were like a really good game of follow the leader, except the leader was invisible and made of electricity. Oh, and I think I accidentally fixed something in there. There was this beeping thingy that seemed sad, so I pressed some buttons until it stopped beeping. The silence that followed was the kind of silence usually reserved for moments when everyone in the room simultaneously realizes they've been living their lives completely wrong. 17 minutes, 43 seconds, Lieutenant Glickson whispered, his crystalline form flickering like a computer trying to process an impossible equation. New galactic record. Margin of victory. 29 minutes, 49 seconds. Commander Thorax stood perfectly still, staring at Emma like she was a small, pig-tailed meteor that had just crashed through his understanding of reality. She just asked for juice boxes, he said faintly. Do you have the kind with the little straws? Emma asked hopefully. Those are my favorite. That's when the existential crisis really set in. You could literally see the moment when it hit every alien in the facility. Their ultimate test of military readiness, their pinnacle of tactical engineering, their pride and joy, had just been conquered by someone who was primarily concerned about beverage accessibility. Perhaps, Emma continued, examining the piece of technology she'd liberated from the course, you could make the spinny parts go a little faster next time? And maybe add some music? The laser things were pretty, but they could use a better soundtrack than all that beeping. Lieutenant Glickson made a sound like a computer crashing. Commander Thorax sat down heavily on a nearby bench, looking like someone had just explained to him that everything he'd ever learned about physics was actually just a really elaborate practical joke. She wants us to make it harder, Thorax said to no one in particular. The small human thinks our ultimate challenge needs improvement. Oh, and maybe some snacks, Emma added helpfully. I got hungry around the crushing thingy part. A vending machine would be nice. The final nail in the coffin of alien military pride came when Emma handed me the piece of technology she'd found. It was, according to the horrified maintenance staff, a critical component of the course's safety systems that had been malfunctioning for months. She'd fixed their obstacle course by accident while treating it like a playground. The academy was never quite the same after that. 3 months later, the Death Gauntlet was quietly redesigned, based on what the official reports diplomatically called human consultation feedback. The new version included faster spinning mechanisms, a soundtrack, and yes, a vending machine halfway through. It also had a 98% failure rate. Apparently, making an obstacle course more fun doesn't necessarily make it easier for people who think like adults instead of kids on a sugar high. Who knew? As for me, I became known throughout the academy as Morrison, the guy whose sister broke our entire military training philosophy. It's not the reputation I was hoping for, but I'll take it. Emma left the next day, completely unaware that she'd become a legend. Her parting gift to Commander Thorax was a drawing of him as a friendly dinosaur teaching a playground safety class. He had it framed. The real kicker came 6 months later, when Galactic Command issued a new training directive. Apparently, they'd analyzed Emma's approach and concluded that humans don't see obstacles the way other species do. We don't see tests or challenges or carefully calibrated learning experiences. We see problems that need solving, games that need playing, or in Emma's case, really elaborate jungle gyms that someone forgot to make fun enough. That's what makes humans terrifying to aliens, by the way. It's not our strength or our technology or our tactical brilliance. It's the fact that we can look at their most serious, carefully designed challenges and ask, but where are the juice boxes? Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is refuse to take something seriously, especially if you're 8 years old and the grown-ups forgot to explain why you should be scared.